What's up, peeps? It's me. I'm back. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody's being safe. I hope everybody's being smart, and I hope everybody is staying on code. This is going to be short because there's just one thing that I want to go over with y'all, but it's very, very important, and it's something that I think all black folks in America, especially foundational black Americans, need to know about. You need to know what's, like I said, you need to know what's going on behind the scenes, the little quiet stuff that's going on that mainstream media is not reporting, that mainstream media is not talking about. You need to know those things because it's those things that are most important. It's those things that they are trying to distract us from, okay? Side note, I think everybody at this point, and maybe not, but most of us, and for those who are new, for those who are who have just clicked on and decided to listen to my channel for the first time, if you are foundational black American, and again, this is not an indictment of all black immigrants. Okay, let's make sure we understand that we're not talking about all black immigrants. We're just talking about the coon class that comes over here. They were cooning over there in the country where they came from, and when they got here, they continued to coon. And now they have more access, or they feel like they have more access to white folks, so they coon it up even more. But understand, they were coons before they got here. And they had all of this vitriol and all of this animosity towards black Americans or foundational black Americans before they ever got here. You understand what I'm saying? It's not a culture that they stepped into. It's not something that's cultivated in them once they get here. They already have it. We've already had a Chinese a woman from immigrant parents let us know that most of the time this anti-blackness, this anti-black sentiment, this anti-black hatred is developed in that country that they immigrate from. It's already there. So most of these immigrants, not just black immigrants, but most immigrants, all immigrants from Europe, from South America, Latin America, Central America, from the Caribbean, most all Africa, most all immigrants, whether they be black or non-black, already harbor these anti-black feelings before they even get here. And then once they get here, they just realize that it's much easier for them to side with white supremacy against us. Okay? So, and I think with all the spaces that have been going on Twitter this week, last week, and everything, especially the ones that Tariq has been doing and others, I think it is just now beyond trying to hide it. We can't hide it anymore. We can't dismiss it anymore. We can't ignore it anymore. That most immigrants, even black immigrants, especially black immigrants, they don't like us. They hate us, and they share the same animosity and vitriol and hatred for us as white supremacy. They even come at us with white supremacy talking points. So, you know, we know it now. It has been exposed. Tariq is great about exposing anti-black hatred from different people and different groups of people and different ethnic groups. He is great for exposing that. That's the reason why they call him a race baiter, and that's the reason why he has latched on to that name and has accepted it wholeheartedly, because that's exactly what he does. He baits these folks and they expose their racism. They expose their anti-black hatred. So it has now been exposed. We know what the game is. We know what the get down is. You understand what I'm saying? So it's time for us to cut off that sector. You understand what I'm saying? To continue to call out the immigrant coons the same way that we call out these black homegrown coons. And it's time for us to realize, okay, well, that's with them feeling the way that they feel about us, and they feel this way. They don't start feeling this way after they get here. Understand, they feel this way before they get here. And once they get here, after, you know, they have pretended to be like us long enough to get the benefits and the set-asides and all of that we paved the way for them to get, And they've been here long enough for them to feel like they better than us. And they've been here long enough for white supremacy to whisper in their ear and tell them that they special and all of that. Then their true feelings come out about us. So it's time for us to just leave them alone. Leave them alone. Continue to call them out like we've been doing. Continue to call out the homegrown coons like we've been doing. And move on from that. We cannot allow that to become another distraction. Right? Just like they're trying to distract us with all of this about this first black woman Supreme Court nominee and all of that. And as Jason Black and Tariq and Professor Black Truth and all of them have put out there, and other black media sources have put out there, that these ain't nothing but a bunch of swirlers and divestors. You understand what I'm saying? And black women that are going to hold the soap and carry the water for white supremacy. None of them are pro-black. None of them have any kind of pro-black record. Remember, we are looking for paperwork now. We are looking for you to bring paperwork, for you to have a track record in being about black empowerment. You understand what I'm saying? And using your platforms, using your political power, using your political clout, using your political office. You understand what I'm saying? To better black society and to improve the economic situation for black folk in America. And if you don't have a track record for doing that, and they just throw you out there and we just supposed to accept you because you supposed to be the first black this and the first black that, no. These folks were not nominated or selected by the grassroots. These folks were not wanted by the grassroots. We are not demanding a black woman on the Supreme Court. That's not what we're demanding. We're not demanding that Oprah Lee, you know, the old lady that was going around doing all of this activism work to have Juneteenth recognized as a federal holiday. You understand what I'm saying? A holiday that benefits everybody, even though Juneteenth ain't about everybody. Juneteenth was only about foundational black Americans and those who had been freed from American chattel slavery. But the federal holiday is for everybody. And we supposed to be all happy and just all giddy about that bunch of symbolic bullshit. And now they're Biden running around talking about, and it's being thrown out there now that they're possibly thinking about nominating her to get the Nobel Peace Prize, Oprah Lee. Okay, and what is she going to get the Nobel Peace Prize for? Selling us out over a pen. The pen that Joe Biden used to sign Juneteenth in as a national federal holiday. No, thank you. See, that's just another bunch of symbolism. Black woman on the Supreme Court. Oprah Lee for Juneteenth. Possible nomination for Nobel Peace Prize. All of this different symbolic mess that we don't need. We don't need it. We didn't ask for it. That's not what we're asking for. What we are demanding is our tangibles. What we are demanding is reparations. What we are demanding is that we get what is owed to us as the foundation and the builders of this nation. And all this other first black mess you run around trying to do, we're not interested in that. That ain't putting no money in our pocket because you give Oprah Lee the Nobel Peace Prize. That ain't putting no money in our pocket. You understand what I'm saying? That ain't making the situation no better for foundational black Americans. That ain't doing nothing about these police officers that's still out here in these streets killing us with impunity. It ain't doing nothing about our real issues. And another black Supreme Court justice like Clarence Thomas ain't gonna help us. None whatsoever. We already got one. We already got a black one up there. So putting the first black woman up there, and she married white, and she has to live within her home, you understand what I'm saying, with a partner from the dominant society, and she not trying to cause no whole lot of friction in her home, where she got to lay her head where she got to be all the time to support us. Let's just be real. It's very, very hard to be pro-black empowerment when you sleep white. And you got to worry about whether or not you offending your husband or your wife or your in-laws or whatever. Now, if you're one of those rare ones, you understand what I'm saying, that can maintain and can hold on to your black identity, even though you sleep white or you marry white or whatever, or you marry from a non-black person. If you are one of those few, and it's rare, there are a few, it's rare, but there are a few who can maintain and hold on to their individual black identity and not get confused, not get mixed up, not get lost in the sauce. And the ones with all of these great political aspirations and want to hold all of these public offices and all of these so-called high power positions and all of that, ain't none of them trying to do it. Ain't none of them trying to do it. They willing to do whatever's necessary, say whatever is necessary to please whatever person in the dominant society, whatever group in the dominant society they have to please so they can get them butter biscuits. They'll sell out in a minute. But see, they using all of this stuff, voting rights, black Supreme Court nominees. You understand what I'm saying? They're using all of this stuff to distract from these sinister moves. Remember, we just did a video on it about the sinister moves that are being made behind all of this distraction. And now I want to bring to your attention another sinister move that's being made. And it directly affects foundational black Americans. Well, it directly affects all black Americans. But since a lot of these black immigrants don't class themselves, you understand what I'm saying, or don't consider themselves black, well. But what I'm getting ready to bring to your attention affects us directly, and more than it affects anybody else, okay? So be ready. Now remember, the email for the the email for the channel is in the description box, as well as the PayPal and the Cash App for the channel will be in the description box, as well as links to the stuff that I read from, so you can go and you can read all of this information and you can find out about this bill, because this is a bill that they're trying to pass in one of the states, so that you can find out about all of this stuff. Because I'm gonna read you a little bit, because I don't tend to stay here long, because I need to go to bed so I can get up and go to work in the morning. So I don't mean to stay here long, but I'm going to stay here long enough to make sure that you have enough information so that you can follow up on this, okay? All right, so let's get on into this. Now, I got this information from a Twitter link that I saw yesterday. And it was so interesting till I got to following the link, and Lord of mercy, let me tell you what I found out. Now, this is coming from Lindsay Simmons. And it says Lens for Congress. So evidently this is and she's a white woman. So evidently she's a seventh generation Missourian, former candidate for MOO4, proud Army wife and boy mom. So I guess she has a son, right? And this is what her tweet reads: because this is Missouri and there's no shortage of racism. Now, this is a white woman. This is Lindsay Simmons, and I guess she's going in for Congress or whatever. I also want you all to know about one of the worst bills I have ever seen in Missouri General Assembly. Let me read that again. Because this is Missouri, and there's no shortage of racism. I also want you all to know about one of the worst bills I've ever seen in Missouri General Assembly. Senate Bill, and get this, y'all, Senate Bill 666. And if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that is the number of the what do you call it on the table, the table with the oxygen and all of that stuff for melanin, 666, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, Senate Bill 666 makes Missouri a safe haven for the lynching of black men. Now, this is what she put on her own Twitter post. And of course, it will be linked in the description box, as well as you'll see a picture of it in the video. It'll be linked to in the description box, so you can go and you can read it and you can follow the thread just like I did. Because when I read that last part right there, Senate Bill 666 makes Missouri a safe haven for the lynching of black men. I was okay. Yeah, let me see what's going on here. Let me find out what's going on here, right? Okay, now let me read just a little bit more of what all she has on Twitter, and then I'll take you to the actual bill. That this bill is in direct response to the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, the reckless actions of the McCloskeys. The McCloskeys is that man and wife that stood outside their homes during the summer of 2020 when everybody was protesting over the murder of George Floyd. And pointed guns at the protesters. Those are the McCloskeys that she's talking about. That this bill is in direct response to the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, the reckless actions of the McCloskeys, and the sham that was the Rittenhouse trial. There is no doubt. So she's saying there's no doubt that this bill is a direct response to those three events. But before delving into the new law, let's recap where Missouri is currently in terms of crime law. Recall that Missouri is now a safe haven for criminals using guns. In 2021, it became illegal for local law enforcement to work with federal law officials if the crime involved the use of a firearm. So in 2021, Missouri made it illegal for local law enforcement, sheriff departments, police departments, whatever, to work with federal law enforcement if the crime that was committed involved the use of a firearm, if it involved a gun. In fact, local authorities have let fugitives go for fear of violating that law and being fined $50,000. And there's an article listed. She's had an article listed here where they talk about Missouri trooper released fugitive because of act blocking federal. Hold up, I'm waiting for it to come up. Oh well, it won't come up. That's fine. I ain't trying to read it. But y'all can read it because you have to have a subscription to this kansascity.com. The Department of Justice said Tuesday the Second Amendment Preservation Act poses a clear and substantial threat to public safety. That's just part of the article. Anyway, let's continue with Lindsay. That law was written in the aftermath of January 6th so that Missouri would function as a safe haven for militias and domestic terrorists. And mind you, this law passed after the NAACP had already issued a travel warning for the state of Missouri. So CNN shows here on August 3rd, 2017, NAACP issues its first statewide travel advisory for Missouri. The NAACP is sending a strong message to people of color traveling through Missouri. Go at your own risk. So now this is just how racist Missouri is. Now we already knew about all the sundown towns and all this kind of stuff throughout the South and the North. You understand what I'm saying? In the Midwest and other places. We already had the Green Book, which was the book that black people used so that they would know when they were, especially when they were traveling down south and in some places in the north, when they would know, you know, the safe restaurants and the safe hotels and all of this kind of stuff that they could go to that were quote unquote Negro friendly. But this is the NAACP actually sending a travel warning black people that if you're going through and you're traveling through Missouri, you're doing it at your own risk, okay? Now, this is just all the information that Lizzie is offering in this thread, in this tweet. So here we are. America's foremost breeding ground for domestic terrorism, with local law enforcement unable to work with the feds or stop gun crime. And now we have SB Senate Bill 666 sitting in the Missouri Senate. Now, see, this is what white supremacy has been up to. You understand what I'm saying? We got Ron DeSantis and the governor of Texas. I think his name is Dan Patrick, or he might be the assistant, the lieutenant governor. But we got in Florida and Texas and all these different places coming up with all of these different laws for riots and protesters. You understand what I'm saying? Giving folks the right to run over protesters and kill protesters and all this under the guise that they rioting. You know, and all of these laws that they putting on the books now, talking about you can't teach history, and telling teachers how much they can say about slavery and about the history of black folks in America and all of that. Well, this is what Missouri is doing. Missouri is like, damn CRT, we going straight to the point. Damn critical race theory, we going straight to the point. Although, let's be clear, critical race theory is not anything that is taught in school. It is not anything that is taught in K through 12 schools. Critical race theory is something that's taught in universities in law class. It's a law theory, okay? No children, K through 12, are being taught critical race theory. So that's just a bunch of bullshit. Always been a bunch of bullshit. But anyway, let's get back. Missouri is like, damn, that we're not doing critical race theory. We're going straight to the map. This new piece of legislation would shield those claiming they acted in self-defense from having to prove that their fear was reasonable. And she actually has a picture here of the actual bill, where it says there shall be a presumption of reasonableness under this section, that the defendant believes such force was necessary to defend himself or herself or a third party from what he or she believed to be the use of or intimate use of unlawful force by another person. So what it's saying is, you don't have to be able to prove that your fear was reasonable. When you claim self-defense, you have to be able to prove that you really that there was a real reason why you thought your life was in danger, or that there was an imminent threat being posed to you or somebody that was with you or whatever. You have to be able to prove that there was a reason, that it was reasonable for you to think that. But according to Senate Bill 666, you don't have to do that anymore. Okay, let's keep going. Let's break that down for anyone not wasting away in law school debt. Under current law and the law of the entire country, to prove you acted in self-defense, you have the burden of proving you reasonably believed deadly force was necessary to defend yourself or others. No one has a right to inflict harm upon another. But as a society, we recognize that if your life is out into jeopardy by another, you have a right to defend yourself, right? You have a right to defend yourself. However, you then have to justify why you believed your life was in jeopardy in the first place. You have to prove that you really believed, and that there was a reasonable expectation that your life might have been in danger. So you can claim self-defense because you have the right to defend yourself if somebody is really trying to harm you. But once you have done that and you commit a crime doing that, then you have to prove that you had a real reason, a reasonable reason for believing that your life was in danger in the first place. SB 666 would change that. It would grant anyone who claims self-defense the benefit of believing they were acting reasonably. No proof necessary. Just a presumption that the person acted in good faith. So this bill would remove the necessity for the person who committed the crime and is claiming self-defense. This Senate Bill 666 would remove their responsibility of proving anything. This law just says, okay, they said they acted in self-defense. Well, boom, we believe that they really believe that they acted in self-defense. Boom, we just believe that they honestly believe that their lives were in danger. They don't have to prove anything. And you just committed a crime. You just hurt somebody or you just killed somebody. And your first claim is going to be self-defense. Well, according to this law, this Senate Bill 666, now you don't have to prove that. You don't have to prove that you really thought your life was in danger. That you really had a real reason for assuming that your life was in danger. That there was imminent threat to your life. That's right. This is Lizzie still talking. That's right. If you kill someone in the street and claim it was self-defense, you are immune from criminal prosecution. Hear me again. If you kill someone in the street in Missouri under this SB 666, if you kill somebody in the street and claim it was self-defense, that automatically makes you immune from criminal prosecution. And the police can't even arrest you unless they think your use of force was unlawful. Now, how many white folks running around killing black folks and claiming self-defense? How many of those situations do you think the police are going to step in and arrest that white person because they think that their use of force was unlawful? When white folks have always been able to kill black folks with impunity and walk away from it. Now, let me read this. This is section 563.085 of this SB 666. A person who uses or threatens to use force pursuant to section 563.031, that is the section that says that you are presumed to be acting in good faith, is justified in such conduct and is immune from criminal prosecution and civil action. So not only can you not be prosecuted criminally, you are even immune from civil action. Now I want you to think about all of these civil lawsuits that black folks have been winning against people. Even though they couldn't get a criminal prosecution, they've been winning all of these civil actions, especially against the police and all of this kind of stuff. Well, this is saying that not only do you not have to worry about any criminal charges, you don't even have to worry about being sued civilly. And them having a civil case showing that you were responsible for this person's wrongful death. A person who uses or threatens to use force pursuant to section 563.031 is justified in such conduct and is immune from criminal prosecution and civil action for the use or threatened use of such force by the person, personal representatives, or heirs of the person against whom the force was used or threatened. Unless the person against whom force was used or threatened is a law enforcement officer who was acting in the performance of his or her official duties and the officer identified himself or herself in accordance with any applicable law, or the person using or threatening to use. So what they're saying is, if the person that you killed was a cop, then you can't use this. You can't use this. If the person that was causing you to fear your life was a police officer or anybody in law enforcement, and they were acting in the line of duty, or they were acting in their responsibility as in their duty as a law enforcement officer, you can't use this. So you tell me this ain't directly about black folks. You can't use this. If it's a law enforcement officer, all of a sudden, that presumption of you acting in good faith and not needing any proof, all of that goes out the window. All of a sudden, that being immune to criminal prosecution and civil action, all of that goes out the fence and goes out the window if it's a police officer. But anybody else, it says, a law enforcement agency may use standard procedures for investigating the use or threatened use of force as described in subsection 1 of this section. But the agency may not arrest the person for using or threatening to use force unless the agency determines that there is probable cause that the force that was used or threatened was unlawful. But they're already telling you that you have the right to defend yourself. So if you claim that whatever you used was unlawful, just think about Kyle Rittenhouse. You go somewhere with a gun. You go somewhere with the intentions of starting something. You start something with some people. You understand what I'm saying? You end up murdering 2 people and maiming 1 person, and then you get to claim self-defense. And you can only be prosecuted if the state can prove by clear and convincing evidence that you didn't act reasonably. This shifts the burden completely off of the individual who has already, by virtue of claiming self-defense, admitted to committing a violent act. Now, y'all got to read this thread. Y'all have really got to read this, because it goes on. She actually goes on to talk about all the different people that were at the hearing for this, those who opposed it, those who were against it. You had and what surprised me was you had quite a few law enforcement agencies that were against it. You even had some police unions in Missouri that were against this bill. Right? Now, the last thing I want to read that she wrote, and then I want to move on to something else, is it means that that person doesn't have to justify their actions or explain to a jury's satisfaction that they reasonably feared for their life. This law makes the presumption that anyone claiming self-defense is automatically telling the truth. Combine that with the fact local law enforcement can't investigate federal gun crimes any longer, and what you're creating in Missouri is a legal framework that makes the state a safe haven for criminal activity, a place where murder plus lynching is self-defense. And then she goes on right here to say something that's very important, and I want you to pay attention to this, right? Never forget that when far too many view blackness as a deadly weapon itself, you just being black is a threat. That's an imminent threat to me. That's what she's saying. Never forget that when far too many people view blackness as a deadly weapon, there will always be people who feel justified in protecting themselves against it, against blackness. Because just your presence, just your black presence is a threat. So they legalize murder. SB 666 is that law. And like I said, she goes on to tweet some stuff from a lady by the name of Kristen Bowen. And you need to get that thread too. You need to read that thread. You need to go down this whole thread and read Kristen Bowen's threads, because she goes in and she talks about all the different people, and she reads off their statements, what they had to say during these hearings and all that, because they're having these hearings to decide whether or not they're gonna pass this thing. And you find out who's opposing it, who's against it, who's for it, the whole 9 yards. Now, right quick, I want to take you to Missouri Senate. It says full bill text, and not very long. It's not very long at all. And I'll have the link. It's like 3 full pages and half of a fourth page. But I'm not gonna read that because that would take too long. But I'll have a link to it so that you can read it. You understand what I'm saying? I'll have a link to it so that you can read the full text of the bill. But what I do want to read is the short version. And it says Missouri Senate, SB 666, Senate Bill 666, modifies provisions on self-defense, sponsor Burlington, Committee, Transportation, Infrastructure, and Public Safety, LR number 3356S.01L, last action 201-2022, hearing conducted by Transportation, Infrastructure, and Public Safety Committee, effective August 28, 2022. So I guess they're gonna have to either pass this bill or leave it sitting or whatever by August 28, 2022. And it says current bill summary. And this is the summary of the bill. SB 666, presumption of reasonableness, section 563.031. Under current law, the defendant has the burden to prove he or she reasonably believed physical or deadly force was necessary to protect him, herself, or a third person. This act provides that there shall be a presumption of reasonableness automatically, that the defendant believed such force was necessary to defend himself, herself, or a third person. So this bill is just going to wipe out any need to prove the reasonableness of your belief. You understand what I'm saying? That your life was in danger. Immunity from liability. Section 563.085. This act provides that a person who uses or threatens to use force in self-defense is immune from criminal prosecution and civil action for the use of such force unless such force was used against a law enforcement officer who was acting in the performance of his or her official duties and the person reasonably knew or should have known that the person was a law enforcement officer. So that knocks out most of the black people, you understand what I'm saying, who are being killed by police officers. So, of course, this is just more qualified immunity for them. But now not only do they get, not only do you solidify in this bill, not only do you solidify qualified immunity for law enforcement, now you're giving qualified immunity to citizens. That's actually what this bill does. You know, them irregular forces of white supremacy that Professor Black Truth is always talking to us about. These militias, the Proud Boys, these white supremacist groups, and these white supremacist nationalists and extremists, and these far-right groups and all of this kind of stuff. And Professor Black Truth has pointed them out to be the irregular forces of white supremacy. Law enforcement is the technical enforcement arm of white supremacy. But you have those irregular forces, like Kyle Rittenhouse was, and all those other white supremacists and Proud Boys and all of those Oath Keepers and all those other little folks that was there. All of those are irregular forces for white supremacy, and they work hand in hand with law enforcement. So what they're doing here is giving people like that qualified immunity. The same type of immunity that police officers have, that law enforcement has. Immunity from prosecution, as well as qualified immunity from any form of civil action against you. You didn't kill somebody. You claim in self-defense. You don't have to prove any You don't have to prove any reason why you felt like your life was in danger. You ain't got to prove none of that. You ain't got to show no evidence that you really had a real reason to believe that your life was in danger. So somebody's dead. You don't have to prove anything. All you have to do is claim self-defense under this bill. Okay, well, automatically, you telling the truth. You actually believe that your life was in danger. And now, not only do you not have to worry about any criminal prosecution, you also don't have to worry about any civil actions against you. Additionally, a law enforcement agency may use standard procedures for investigating the use or threatened use of force, but the agency may not arrest the person for using or threatening to use force unless the agency determines that there is probable cause that the force that was used or threatened was unlawful. So now they leave it up to law enforcement to decide whether or not the force that was used in your self-defense was lawful or unlawful. So when you ask the question, well, will this help black people who feel like their lives are being threatened, who feel like, there's an imminent threat to them or those around them, and they use force and they end up killing somebody? You understand what I'm saying? Will this apply to them? No, because law is left up to the discretion of law enforcement to decide whether or not that use of force was unlawful. And in most cases, I guarantee you, if it's a black person, law enforcement will decide that that use of force was unlawful. Especially if that use of force was against somebody of the dominant society or somebody of another race. Whether it be Asian, you understand what I'm saying, Hispanic or whatever. So that's the loophole that they threw in there right there so that they could trap black folks and let those in the dominant society and those from other races who harm black folks get away with it. That's the loophole right there. When you leave it up to the discretion of law enforcement to decide whether or not the use of force was lawful or not. This act provides that the defendant can raise a claim of self-defense during a pretrial hearing in either a criminal or civil case, which shall shift the burden on the party seeking to overcome the immunity by proof of clear and convincing evidence. So now, no longer does the defendant have the burden of proving that you really felt like your life was in danger. Now, the burden of proof has shifted to the victim. Now the victim has to prove with clear and convincing evidence. Okay, well, if the victim is dead, how is the victim going to prove anything? How is the victim going to prove anything? Finally, this act repeals provisions relating to civil remedies that are unaffected by criminal provisions of self-defense law. So this is SB 666 in a nutshell. And you can clearly see how it targets black folks. You can clearly see that. Okay? And like I said, this is just the summary. But within this summary, if you click on full text, full bill text, and then you click on introduced, and you'll get the PDF of the entire bill, and you can read it. So this will be linked in the description box so that you can read the full bill if you want to, but that was a summary of what this bill is all about, okay? Now, let's go to one more thing, and this is coming out of KFVS.com, well, KFVS12.com. This was, let me get the date. February 1st, 2022. Southeast Missouri prosecutor. Senate Bill 666 is a make murder legal act. And that's exactly what it does. It makes the murdering, especially the murdering of black folks, the lynching of black folks, legal. You understand what I'm saying? That's the reason why you got all of these folks running around now talking about self-defense. Kyle Rittenhouse got away with that lie, talking about self-defense. You got these white folks that killed the brother Peter Spencer, the Jamaican immigrant. You got them running around talking about self-defense. Everybody now is talking about self-defense. Okay, so let's see what the Southeast Missouri prosecutor has to say about this bill. This is by Kathy Sweeney. It was updated, like I said, February 1st, 2022. Stoddard County, Missouri. Another possible change to Missouri law has prosecutors, sheriffs, and police chiefs in the heartland sounding the alarm. So now you know it's a bunch of bullshit if you got prosecutors and folks in law enforcement not going along with this. Because understand, white supremacists can see the loophole in there. They can see where law enforcement has been given the discretion to decide whether or not the use of force that was used to kill this person in self-defense was lawful or not. So the loophole is there. But even prosecutors and sheriff's departments and police chiefs all over the heartlands are talking about, no, this is bullshit, right? This time they say criminals could cry self-defense and possibly get away with murder. Ain't no possibly in it. It would absolutely create chaos in the state of Missouri. Stoddard County prosecuting attorney Russ Oliver is talking about Senate Bill 666. Under the measure, all cases of physical or deadly force will be presumed to be self-defense unless proven otherwise. So all you got to do is point a gun at your target, pull a bullet in their head, make sure they dead so that they can't come back and later testify or be able to prove anything. And then when the police get there, say it was self-defense, and at that point you off the hook. Just make sure there are no witnesses around. Just like Jason Black pointed out about what Kyle Rittenhouse was supposed to be trying to do. He was supposed to be trying to lure these people into positions where there were no witnesses around so that he could claim self-defense. Okay, well, it ain't nobody to say that it wasn't self-defense. So all you have to do is lure somebody that you want to murder, somebody that you want to kill. Lure them away from any witnesses. You understand what I'm saying? Kill them, make sure they're dead so that they can't come back and testify, or so that they can't come back by and prove that you weren't posing any kind of threat to them. And then when the police show up, law enforcement shows up, all you got to do is say it's self-defense. Who's to argue against you? That's all you got to do. It would automatically have the presumption of self-defense in every single assault, every single murder, he said. Oliver testified against SB 666 before members of the Transportation, Infrastructure, and Public Safety Committee. He spoke on behalf of the Missouri Association of Prosecuting Attorneys, where he serves as a legislative committee member. It was important to come up here and let our senators know that this bill is dangerous to public safety. This bill is dangerous to our victims, and we shouldn't have to go before a judge before we can arrest someone who has killed someone. You understand what I'm saying? And I know there may be many of you right now that might be thinking, okay, well, this bill would also apply to black people. No, it wouldn't. And the reason why it wouldn't is because in the bill, they've already put the loophole in the bill that's going to trap up black folks. When they give law enforcement the discretion to decide whether or not that use of violence was lawful or unlawful. And in the case of, I would say, at least 98% of the black people that found themselves in this position, I guarantee you the law enforcement will try to argue that that use of force was unlawful. So no, this won't help black folks. This is meant to harm black people. And that's the reason why Lizzie Simmons decided that she was going to tweet about it and she was going to explain it and break it down to us. Oliver also joined a host of law enforcement leaders from throughout southeast Missouri in sending a letter to State Senator Jason Bean. In it, they called SB 66 a disaster for public safety, making it even harder to bring violent criminals to justice. Then they have the letter here. It's a 2-page letter. You can read the letter here in the article. Cape Girardeau Police Chief Wes Blair added his name to that letter. There's obviously the real potential that the moment they claim self-defense, that our hands are tied, he said. Blair said this new push comes as they're still handcuffed by the Second Amendment Preservation Act, which keeps them from working with the federal government on gun cases. Okay, and we know how the federal government looks at gun cases. You understand what I'm saying? The federal government never stepped in and said a word. You understand what I'm saying? About the Kyle Rittenhouse thing when they pretty much act like the straw purchase didn't happen. Like it was legal. The ATF never stepped in and said anything about that. We thought, well, you can't get much worse than that. And now, here we are looking at potential legislation that says unless I can definitively prove that a suspect was not acting in self-defense, I can't even make an arrest. That's why the letter ends with a statement Oliver made under oath. SB 666 is being called the Make Murder Legal Act. Law enforcement feels like they're under attack from Jefferson City, and we had to come up here and tell them that you can't make our job that much harder and putting that many hurdles between us and seeking justice for victims of violent crime. SB is sponsored by Republican Eric Burleson, who also sponsored the Second Amendment Preservation Act, which is still being challenged in court. According to his office, since we are not in his district, he is not interested in commenting on this story. No word yet on when that Senate committee will make a vote on the measure. Now, I want to read one more thing to you right quick. Let me get this. Let me find this. Where she goes into talking about, show this thread. She talks about a black senator who was talking. Senator Williams. This may be the worst bill he's seen. Senator Williams replies, this bill is an attack on me and people who look like me. He's a black man. This bill is complete bullshit, he says, and refers to the violence in Georgia and Minnesota. Williams suggests if SB 66 passes, we will see armed extremists here, much the way the insurrectionists attacked our nation's capital. What about the folks who stormed my house, McCloskey says. And they weren't storming his house. They were simply walking down the road past his house. They were not storming his house. As we saw on video, they were not storming his house. They didn't even go up in his yard. McCloskey says when the shit hits the fan, you cannot rely on police. He says they did not arrive when he needed them. If this bill passes, we are putting all our lives in danger, says Senator Brian Williams, alluding to the political violence in Washington. Williams calls out McCloskey for campaigning in, and it's a hashtag MO, Missouri legislator via his testimony today. The protest that went by McCloskey's house was made up of students, clergy, and people demonstrating, as is their right, he says. McCloskey asserts the mob threatened to rape, kill, and burn. No, they didn't. Asks whether he supports law enforcement and why law enforcement would oppose SB 66. McCloskey says law enforcement supports me and says that they must not understand the bill. So it must be they don't understand the bill. That's the reason why law enforcement isn't supporting this bill. Hold on. It was something else that I saw. First person testifying in opposition is Russ Oliver, Stoddard County prosecuting attorney who represents the Missouri prosecuting attorneys. Their association is united against this bill. He says it shifts the burden for defendants. Oliver enumerates issues for defendants and prosecutors in his 2 minutes. In response to Senator Williams' question, the prosecutor responds that he calls SB 666 the Make Murder Legal Act. It's racist, it's hateful, it makes police officers' jobs difficult, Williams said. If this bill had been in law in Georgia, Ahmaud Arbery's murderers would have walked free, Williams said. When did we become the enemy? In this building, Oliver asked, directed at the bill's sponsor. With this law, every single assault is automatically self-defense, he said. So you got all kinds of people, all kinds of organizations that have joined forces to stand against this bill. But I just thought it was very, very necessary for us, especially as foundational Black Americans, to see why we are being distracted with all of these symbols and all of this symbolic bullshit and all of this kind of stuff. Is because this is the kind of stuff that white supremacy is doing behind the scenes. And like I said, Missouri was like, well, damn, all of that CRT and trying to get laws on the books to stop writing history. Let's just get some laws on the books that make it a whole lot easier for citizens to now. Police officers already can kill with impunity. They can already kill black people with impunity. They've been doing it for centuries. Well, so have citizens. But they weren't immune. But let's give them a bill that's not only going to strengthen qualified immunity for law enforcement, but it's actually going to give that same level of qualified immunity to citizens. And all they got to do is make sure that nigga is dead, there wasn't no witnesses, and then just claim self-defense. So this is what I wanted to bring y'all because I think it's very important. Please make sure you share this video. Please like the video. Please make sure you share this information. Please make sure that you have these discussions, that you're talking to family, you're talking to friends, that you're on your social media posting this and letting people know about this, letting people know what Missouri is doing. Because you have to understand, if they get it through in Missouri, that's just going to be the first. But it certainly will not be the last. In Georgia and Florida and all of those new different laws and stuff that they put on the books for rioters and protesters and all of this is to give people immunity, to give the average citizen immunity in killing folks when you decide that you're going to protest. When you decide that you're going to take to the streets and you're going to rise up. And this bill is taking it even further than that. And they're giving those folks immunity. They give you immunity to run over protesters and rioters in the street and that kind of stuff in these other bills. Well, this is exactly what this was doing, giving just everyday ordinary citizens the same kind of qualified immunity that law enforcement has. So we got to know what we're dealing with when we're dealing with these white supremacists, because we got to know how to move. We got to know how to move around and beyond these laws that they're putting on the books. And that's the reason why they constantly trying to distract us with all of this other mess so we don't see what's going on. So that when it comes to our state, we're not paying attention. And by the time we find out what's going on, it's too late. So like I said, all this information, please go in. Please read this entire thread. When you click the link on Lindsay Simmons's Twitter, Please read the entire thread, as well as definitely reading this thread from Kristen Bowen, because, you know, she's going into talking about the testimony, and she's going into expressing who's for it and who's not for it and all of that. So please make sure that you read her thread as well. Make sure you go in and you read that bill. Like I said, it's only 3 full pages and about a good 2 paragraphs of a 4th page. So it won't take you long to read it. But we read the summary, and the summary pretty much lays out what this bill says. It's not a long, dragged out thing. They are very straight to the point. As we see, white supremacy is getting more and more and more bold and blatant in our faces. The more L's they take. And just like she said at the very beginning of her tweet, this bill is in response to what happened with Ahmaud Arbery, what happened with the McCluskeys, and also that sham that was of a trial for Kyle Rittenhouse. They want these white folks to be able to kill black folks. They want these irregular forces of white supremacy to be able to kill black folks, foundational black Americans, with impunity, and then be able to claim self-defense and just walk away from it. Just walk away from it like Kyle Rittenhouse did. Even though he didn't kill black folks, you understand what I'm saying? He killed white people that were at a protest for somebody black. So we got to understand this stuff. We got to break this stuff down. We have got to see how this stuff targets us foundational black Americans, targets black Americans, period. But especially foundational black Americans, how this stuff targets us right off the bat. And how these legislators, these lawmakers, put certain little loopholes in there, you understand what I'm saying, to protect white folks and to hem black folks up. And like I said, this right here is what is the loophole. This right here in the law, this clause in the law that says additionally, this clause in SB 666 that says additionally, law enforcement agencies may use standard procedures for investigating the use or threatened use of force. But the agency may not arrest the person for using or threatening to use force unless the agency determines. Unless the law enforcement agency, whether it be the sheriff's department, whether it be the police, you understand what I'm saying? Whether it be the State Bureau of Investigations or whatever, unless the agency determines that there is probable cause that the force that was used or threatened was unlawful. So it leaves that to the agency, the law enforcement agency's discretion. And it's that clause right there that's going to hem black folks up in this whole bill. And allow white folk and non-black folks to get away with killing black people. So like I said, please like this video. Please share this information. Please have these conversations. Please let people know what's really going on. Please let people know that while we're being distracted with all this bullshit, this is the kind of stuff that's going down. And it's going down all over the country. Missouri is just so racist that they decided, well, we ain't gonna even try to act like it's nothing else. We just gonna put it on out there. Please subscribe to the channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please hit that bell notification so you can be notified when we upload videos. Like I said, all of this information will be linked down in the description box. Get in that description box, read this entire thread so that you can know what's going on. Read the entire bill. You know, if you want to look up other articles about this that might provide more information or whatever. But this is the gist of what they are trying to pass in Missouri. And like I said, if they get it passed in Missouri, that won't be the end of it. That'll just be the beginning. So white supremacy is ramping up its war against foundational black Americans. And we got to be prepared. We got to be ready. We got to know what moves to make. They making chess moves. So we got to get off of this checkerboard, and we got to start making chess moves too to counter their chess moves. Again, the link to the email for the channel is in the description box, as well as the PayPal and the Cash App for the channel are in the description box. Please leave me your comments. Let me know how you feel about this. Let me know if you live in Missouri, if you've heard anything about this. Let me know if you live in a state where they're trying to do some similar stuff like this, so that, you know, we can talk about that and we can bring that to light. But this is what's going on. This is the need for all the distractions. And you got to understand, it might be Republicans who are proposing this stuff. It might be Republicans who are pushing this stuff. But you got to understand, the Democrats aren't doing anything about it. You understand what I'm saying? You don't hear the left saying anything about it. You don't hear the left down there stumping, or you don't hear any Democratic senators down there stumping and saying, no, 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 no. This is racist. You can't do this. You see, that's how white supremacy on both sides, that's how they work together. They get on code. The Democrats don't mind the Republicans doing this stuff and looking like the bad guys, but they over here not saying anything. All they offering is symbolism. They're not offering us any kind of protections under the law like they did the Asians and everybody else. Have all of these special protections under the law. LGBT and illegals have all of these protections under the law. They're not offering us any of those protections, but they see these kinds of bills, these kinds of policies, and everything being enacted into law. So don't think for 1 minute that the Democrats are your friends and that the Republicans are your enemies. The Democrat is that friend that if you got the Democrat as a friend, who needs an enemy? Because that's that friend that's going to see somebody come and attack you and ain't going to say nothing. But after the attack is over, they're going to come and pat you on your back and say, oh, I'm so sorry. You know, I wish I could have done this, or I wish I could have done that for you. So don't be fooled. So again, it is imperative. It is vital that we get on code, that we stay on code, that we circle our wagons. And anybody that's not riding with us, anybody that's not for us, anybody that's not supporting the black agenda, anybody that's not supporting tangibles, anybody that's not pressing this government to do things specifically for foundational black Americans and for black folks specifically in America, we don't need to be fooling with them. We need to get rid of them. And we have got to continue to call out the coons and the bootlicks and the black puppets for white supremacy. We have got to continue to call them out, whether they be homegrown, FBA, or whether they be immigrants. We have got to continue to call them out. Y'all have a good night.